Afternoon, everyone, on this delightful winter's wet day. I think no matter where you are, it's pouring down. So great to have you on board to another Talking Trade Live. This week's topic, well, we've had some good ones, we've had some lively ones, but I think we all us trades are rubbish at one thing, and that's paperwork. And this week's topic is tax advice, anything really to do with all sorts of things from reversible charge VAT, end of year tax returns. We've got the new grants coming in, and what better person to have than a very good friend of mine, Jaquetta, who is going to guide us all through these lovely. Listen, let's be honest, us trades hate anything to do with tax, but the reality is it's there and we have to do it. So let's just make the most of this. Jaquetta, thank you for joining me again. It's been a while, but
even on a wet day like this. So
yeah, let's go straight into probably the most. Well, there's a couple of things to talk about mainly, but I really want to look at the reversible charge VAT, which has been postponed twice, but now we've got a definite kick-off date.
we have indeed, and it is definite. So it's prick up your ears time. It's the first. That's 1st of March next year. And you might think, oh, that's 3 months away. I don't need to worry about it. But actually, you need to know before it comes in. It won't affect absolutely everyone. But if you're VAT registered and the person you're working for or who's doing work for you is VAT registered, there is a very strong chance you'll need to know about the reverse charge. And
Could you explain it in 2 lines?
Yeah, I can explain why. And that's because we get, it's mainly criminal, but we get people who set up businesses, they do work, they take the VAT off the customer and they never hand it over to HMRC. So they're scamming everyone, basically.
Okay.
And that is a big problem. It's not people with cash flow problems. This is like a big criminal thing that people deliberately set out to do. So that's the why. And in very simple terms, what happened is the person who's going to pay the VAT will change. If you did a job for somebody, you used to charge VAT on your invoice, they'd give you the VAT, and then you would hand it on your next VAT return. So what will happen in future is you will show how much the VAT is on that invoice, but you will only collect the net amount from them. And the person you are doing the work for, remember, because they're also VAT registered, they will hand it over to HMRC in their tax return. So we've used it elsewhere for internet shopping and things like that, and it does help cut the fraud down hugely. So at the end of the day, you still get the same amount of money and the customer still pays the same amount of money, but the way it happens is different. So there are some rules and regs. We've sent out loads of letters to people, but we know people will just say, oh, it's the 1st of March, I don't need to worry about it at the moment. But there are things you've got to do in the meantime. I've mentioned the invoices, so you've got to work out how you do that, whether they're self-billed invoices, back of a fag packet, whatever it is you do, they'll have to show something different. And there are some examples on the government website, so you can look and see what they look like if you make your own up.
Well, I was going to say we're a bit rubbish with paperwork, but the good thing is these days you've got webinars, sort of self-help videos. Where can people go to find them?
Yeah, HMRC has got loads of those out on loads of topics, and certainly we've got webinars up there on the reverse charge. And whatever you're looking for, just put HMRC at the beginning. So HMRC at the beginning, so you don't get some firm of accountants trying to sell you something, or some scammers trying to sell you something. HMRC, reverse charge, construction, or even HMRC VAT construction, you'll find it. But if you can remember reverse charge, or just put HMRC webinar, and then you get a list of all the ones that we do, because we do ones on all sorts of topics, and the reverse charge will be on that list there. So that is new, but what you've got to think is you're going to need new software, because you said most people leave it up to their software, even if their accountant finishes the VAT return off. A second thing, cash flow problems, because you're used to getting the VAT off your customer.
Yeah.
Sit in your bank account for anything up to 3 months when you do your next tax return. So you've got that money you can play with before you have to hand it over.
You
won't have that anymore. So for those few months, there will be a change when you won't have that money, because the customer's going to hand it straight over to HMRC. So you need to have a think about, will that make a difference to you? Will it cause a problem? What are you going to do about it? It might be with your suppliers that you change the terms, they give you a bit longer to pay or something like that, you know, if you buy materials. You will also have to think about any longer term jobs you've got on if they go across the 1st of March. So if you're going to be running it for several months and getting stage payments, then you need to think, because half will be under the old system and half will be under the new. So just be alert for that. The couple of exceptions, if it's 0 rated, don't need to worry about it.
Yeah.
Or if the customer is what they call an end user. So if it's like a domestic customer, we don't need to worry about it. So you need to ask people, if it's like a contractor asking you to do the job, are they the end user? And if they are, they've got to tell you in writing. So you've got it in your records that you can ignore the reverse charge. You don't need to worry about it. So it's getting your head around these ideas. So if you start thinking about them now, you can go and sit down when there's nothing on the telly over Christmas because they haven't been able to make any new content because everyone's been shut down. Then you can go online, have a little look through, get familiar. So you know what an end user is, you know what you need to do. You can think about your invoices. You can have a chat with your software people, whether you've got it on your phone or your laptop or whatever, and say, what are you doing? When can I get this? When will it be on? Can I see how it works? So that when
I think the big thing, Jaquetta, is there's obviously a lot of things to help, but one thing I want to say to everyone: listen, we're not great at this stuff. Let's be fair. Please keep questions coming in. First one off the block, Jaquetta, from Ad the Baron, brilliant name. He says, "Why is the self-employed grant still the same conditions as the first, and are the conditions going to change for the fourth grant? If he's not been able to claim at all and he's been affected."
I would say we don't know what the fourth one's going to be, but the problem is that we know as soon as we hand money out, there are loads of people trying to do fraud, and we're not talking, again, not individuals. It's actually like gangs set stuff up. We've had it with the employment scheme, and we've stopped a whole load of them. If we said, because at the moment we've got these conditions about, you know, it's got to be half or more of your profits, it's got to be under 50,000 or less, and you've got to have had your tax return in, which is the one that was due in last January. If we now said, oh, we can have later tax returns, then everyone was, oh, by the way, I've got a tax return, can I send it in? And now can I claim loads of money? When in fact they've never been in business, we've got no record of them. So at the moment, for the third grant, the conditions are the same, except you've got to have a reasonable expectation of reduced demand. Less customers, or you can get less work through because you're social distancing, or it could be that, you know, you're not allowed to operate because of the government rules at a particular point in time. So if at the moment that's affecting you, you're up for the grant. The fourth one, we don't know the details of yet. So I suspect we'll wait and see what the economy is like at the time, and the Chancellor will make his mind up what he wants at that point in time. So we really don't know.
This time of year, obviously, there's a lot of forms to fill in. Could you quickly go through just to the ones that really aren't sure? Maybe it's the first year they're self-employed, or first year working. We have a lot of apprentices that watch this. What coming up to the year end? What are the main things a lot of people should be looking out for or need to do to get in?
Well, good and bad. You're getting your grant, hopefully, for those of you that do get it. And it was over 750,000 people in construction have claimed that self-employed grant, plus similar sort of number, I think, were furloughed at some point. But yeah, forms. So the self-assessment return should be in at the very latest by 31st of January. If you haven't got an accountant and your business is really simple, you can do it yourself. I've helped friends do it once, and then every other year they've said, no, I don't need you, I can do it myself now. You know, it is that simple. Again, you can get help on this. We've got telephone help if you want it, but please, please, please don't leave it to the last minute. There'll be huge long waits if you leave it to the last week. We get loads of people phoning up. If you haven't got your papers to your accountant, if your accountant is doing it, get them in early, because they'll want to know, because they also have loads of people. They don't want to pay their staff overtime just because you've been late getting the records to them. And if you do want to do it yourself, have a look. If when you go on to do it online in the first place, alongside each little box where you put the numbers in, there's a little question mark in a circle. You can click on that and it will give you help about that one question. So if it's just one thing you're stuck on, it will give you help there. But if you really don't want to know about, if you don't know about the whole thing, I mentioned those YouTube videos. There are lots. Doing your tax return for the first time. What business expenses can I claim? A lot of them are only about 3 or 4 minutes. There's a few that are longer. but a lot of them are quite short. And of course, you can play them 2 or 3 times. We've also got webinars where people dial in and kind of see a presentation and can ask questions, and you can book yourself in on those. We've also got old ones that you can look at. So again, if you can join in one and then play it back again later.
Yeah.
So you can remind yourself of stuff, because nobody takes it all in first time. Of course they don't, if it's new.
No. I think as well. So I just want to try and get the questions out as they come in. So I try not to miss too many out. Keep any question coming in to do with tax, VAT returns, reversible charge, VAT, all the end of year self-assessment. Lauren Childs has asked Jacquetta, my partner's starting self-employment as a subby on the 4th of January. What does he need to do to set up tax returns, etc.?
Okay, if you're starting 4th of January, then usually, doesn't have to, but usually prepare accounts to 31st of March, just because that's easiest. That tax return doesn't need filling in straight away, but it's a good idea just to get in touch with us and just say, I am starting. So you get your registration number, you get everything sorted. If he's a subby, he'll have to look at the CIS scheme and see what's happening there, whether he's going to be gross or net pay. I presume so, because you're on this programme. But you just need to check that out. And also you will start getting links to things that can help him. So he will get links to things like, do you know you have to do this? You can get reminders on your phone, and you'll get pointers to where you can get help and advice. And again, you can join in webinars for people, all of whom are starting in business for the first time, and get some help on that. So get him to give us a ring once he's actually started, and just say, I have started, I'm in the construction sector, what do I need to do? And then we can help you out. The only thing I would say at the moment is normally our helplines, some of them run weekends and evenings, but because we're busy on all the COVID stuff, and we've trained up a lot more people, but there's still a limit. So a lot of them are only weekdays till 6 o'clock at night. So we're sorry about that. We just haven't got any more people. We can move on to those lines when it's busy.
COVID has been wonderful, hasn't it? Good God. Right. Sean Oliver, he's missed the second payment. Is it too late to claim now?
Yes, it is. Unless he had a particularly good reason for missing it. So I don't know what it was, but perhaps he was in hospital or something like that, or changed email addresses and didn't get the invite or something. If that's the case, you can phone us up and explain. And there are some circumstances that they can open it up and basically make the claim for you, so you get the money if you needed it. But it won't stop you making the third one. Even if you never claim the first 2, if you're entitled to the third one, you can just go ahead and claim it now. Maybe you had a really long contract that was keeping you going all through that. I don't know. But if you're in trouble now, yes, you can claim that one now, so long as you've got that reduced demand.
Daniel Long has asked, is there going to definitely be a 4th payment next year?
Chancellor said so. Chancellor has said there will be 4, but we don't know the details yet. It's the same as with the furlough scheme. We know the furlough scheme for the next little bit.
Yeah.
But the last little bit of the furlough scheme, we don't know exactly what that's going to be. At the moment, like it's 80%. We don't know whether it will be 80% in the furlough scheme later on. Self-employed scheme is also 80% on this grant, 80% of your average profits. It might be the same, it might be different. And I think he's waiting until it's nearer the time and we know what's happening. Are people getting back to work? Is everything fine? Well, in the middle of winter, maybe not.
Yeah.
Not unless you run a central heating business. That's probably the only ones that are doing well at the moment. So,
well, he's come back with his answer. He moved house, which I've just done 2 weeks ago, and I still haven't unpacked. So stuff is literally boxed up. I'm with you, Sean. I know what it's like, mate. I've moved house quite a lot in the last few years. Is that good enough, Jacquetta? If he's moving house and everything's still in boxes,
it's not my decision to make.
It's worth him saying that, though, isn't it?
Yeah. If he actually missed the claim because he was in the middle of moving house, because of course they sent out the emails and all the rest of it. Most people it was email, some people it was text, some people it was letter. If he actually missed all of that because he was in the middle of moving house, I would say give us a ring. If he just didn't bother, well, obviously, sorry, but you've missed the deadline. We did give you a couple of months. This current one, the deadline will run out on the 29th of January. And that might sound a little bit odd. So you've got to claim it by then. But that's because, of course, it's a self-assessment deadline on the 31st. And there's absolutely no way could we deal with coping with all the telephone calls from both of them. So self-assessment will have those last 2 days to itself. So if you know, it might be, for instance, that work is actually okay at the moment, but in 2 weeks' time, you lose all your work. So you've still got a little while to claim, but don't leave it beyond the 29th of January. But the guy who was on, yeah, if he really did miss it because everything was topsy-turvy rather than just didn't get round to it, give us a ring. We've got the special COVID helpline, my first phone number. So if he's got that there, if he's got a pen to hand, it will be 0800 024 12 22. If you can't remember that, if you just put HMRC COVID helpline, and that will give you that number. That's the number for all the COVID type stuff that HMRC is dealing with.
We'll try and get a load of links and phone numbers put up at the end. So if you watch this later on or you're finishing your day's work, you can jump on. I think the great thing with this, Jaquetta, let's try and help out as many people as we can rather than us going through it. We've got a few more questions. Adam Stubbs has asked, if someone's gone self-employed after March, can they get any help at all?
No, is the short answer. We don't know what you would have been earning to pay you something different. And that's one of the problems why the scheme is. If we know what you've had in the past, then we can give you 80% or whatever of it. If we don't know what you would be doing if you're in business, we don't know what we're giving 80% of. And we would, as I say, we'd always get people coming up and saying, oh, I've started in business and I'm suddenly making lots of money and, you know, I'm making the maximum you can make and still qualify and I want to claim it. In fact, you get the gang setting it up with loads of people with false identities. So we can't do it that way simply because we know that people would be coming in with hundreds of thousands of pound fraud. If you're old enough to remember when tax credits first came in, we found it then. We had loads and loads of people setting up, either claiming on behalf of 80-year-old pensioners and claiming tax credits for 16 children, or, you know, people who just set up people who didn't really exist. And we can't have people we don't know about just coming up and saying, oh, by the way, I want some money, because we'd just be handing out money to the scammers if we did that.
Yeah. Another question, Daniel Long. I think this is probably a question for a lot of us. In October, he had a full month's work. Will this affect his payments?
October was actually part of the old period, and there you had to just be adversely affected. So if October was normal, but the rest of it wasn't, he was fine. That's not a problem. So for qualifying for C's for this grant, so the self-employed grant for this chunk that's just coming up, it's this period we're looking at. It's kind of November to February. And that's why I say you could have had a good November, but December goes suddenly pear-shaped, and then you're paying for that period. And as I say, we'll have to wait and see what the next one is. There are some examples on the gov.uk site, so HMRC, self-employed, COVID, and the latest one, which came out the end of November, it's got about 8 or 10 examples of who is and who isn't affected, depending on what's happened. So, for instance, if your costs have gone up because you're buying loads of protective equipment, but that's the only change, you can't claim this third one. Whereas if, for instance, the government says you've got to shut, or you're having to work a lot more slowly because you can't have so many people on the job, you know, if you're inside a house and you can only have 2 people at a time instead of 6 people, you're working a lot more slowly, you can't do as many jobs, you're not getting as much money. It's that reduced demand that you can't actually do that. And that's what we're looking for, and that's when you can claim.
This is Talking Trade Live, roughly halfway through this week, and it's tax advice, anything to do with HMRC. The great thing is that we just want to help out as many of you guys and girls as we can, because let's be fair, us trades are generally quite rubbish at this sort of thing. Jaquetta is my guest from HMRC, already answered a load of questions. I'm going to go straight back into more questions, but just keep them coming in. I'm going to read out as many as I can. Katie Smith, I wonder if that's Bricky Chick under another name, probably is. I went self-employed last September, but I'm not allowed any help. Which bracket does she fall into?
The ones that don't get any help, I'm afraid. That's one of the problems with starting recently, is that, as I say, we don't have this track record for you. The government up front said we can't help absolutely everyone in the same way. So for some people, it was universal credit while they weren't working. For some people, it was furlough. For some people, it was self-employed. For people with business premises, although it's not HMRC, there were local authority grants. there was bits and pieces, but we do know there are people who've fallen between the cracks of all that different help. Hopefully, if she started up, the business is doing okay. And that's what we've got to hope for anyone who's starting, is that, you know, that there is work out there and they're getting that work in. What I will say for everyone is paying, because HMRC has been handing out lots of money, but you do still have to pay us from time to time. And the deadline for the self-assessment payments is normally January. If you can pay, obviously, please do. Don't be late. There is interest and possible penalties if you don't. If you need time to pay, and you've got your tax returns in, and it's only this year that you've had problems paying, so like the June payment and the January coming up, if it's under 30,000, you can go online and automatically do yourself a time to pay arrangement. So that will make it a lot easier. You know, you can spread it out. You're not going through Christmas thinking, oh no, I've got to pay £15,000 in January, I haven't got it. You can spread that out over the next year. So have a look at that. Likewise, VAT, if you think about the VAT quarter just before, or just when lockdown first happens, back March to June time, what would have got on that was when you were working, so you would have VAT to pay. But by the time it hit, obviously you don't have the money anymore. We've also setting something up. It won't actually be until February, I think it is, because we've got to get some new legislation in to do it. But you can actually spread that payment out as well. So we don't want people panicking, getting worried, getting depressed about not being able to pay us. If you can self-serve for some of these things, you can just go online and sort out the self-assessment. You should be able to sort out the VAT before too much longer. Failing that, there is a phone number to ring us and to talk about what you can and can't do, how long it's going to take you, and we will try and come to some sort of arrangement so that you can pay it off within a sensible amount of time, but without kind of bankrupting you and meaning that you've got nothing but chips to eat on Christmas Day. That's not what we're here for. We want to keep business going.
Well, I think that's the big thing from talking to you on previous shows the last few years. One thing I've noticed that's changed with HMRC is, listen, a lot of us, especially with what's happened this year, want to pay but can't pay. And there's now, don't panic, you're going to be shut down next week. Pick the phone up and have a chat, because in reality, to be fair, HMRC are willing to try and help now with these spread out payments rather than pressure on you've got to pay by the end of the month or whatever. So if anyone's struggling out there, listen, we all are. It's been a funny old year. Just pick up the phone. We're going to get what links to any phone numbers, webinars, etc. hopefully on as well. I want to go back to the questions. Sorry. First of all, one thing I didn't say, this is advice for UK. Apologies if you're in Florida like Al, or Peru, or Latvia, wherever you are. This is UK based advice. Apologies. If you want me to come over to your country and do advice, just shout. Let's go to Tom Hannon. He's been accepted for a third grant. He didn't have a second but had the first. How are we meant to know if it will affect us in the future? Us self-employed, he's earned a bit the last few weeks, but what happens if we want the grant for peace of mind?
Right. If it's still very uncertain for December and January, I would say claim it now, because you can always hand it back if everything goes smoothly and wonderfully and your profits aren't affected and you don't need it after all. You can hand it back. But if it's still uncertain, you haven't got jobs lined up, or you've only got a few small ones here and there, claim it for now and keep yourself going. That's what the money is there for. So we want to keep people in business if they've got business that they can run. So we'd much rather help you out a little bit over this time so that you're up and running again come next summer, or whenever it is that things pick up again.
Just want to go back to Mark Francis, because we've already tried to help him with one question. He's just backing up what he asked. Further to his question, he's completed tax returns for 2018-19 and 2019-20. Can't you guys base a grant on these returns?
No. If they weren't in by the date that the Chancellor said, then we can't. Again, it's this thing that we get, I don't know what the number is now, but at least 500,000 tax returns every year that we never ask for. People just pop up and said, oh, by the way, I'm doing this. Can I now have some money, or can I now have a repayment? And very often it is people trying to get money out of us. Not all the time. Who knows what will happen next year? I don't. But the Chancellor, and I think he made his announcements 23rd of March. And he actually gave people another month to get their tax return in then. If they were late getting their tax return in, they had another month to get it in. But we said, no, that's got to be it. Because otherwise we would get all these false claims coming through. And unfortunately, we can't sort out the false claims from the good ones.
No,
and that would have
yeah.
a lot more billions lost.
Dean Marsh has just done a full year self-employed, December to December. If I get my return in ASAP, will I be able to get any help?
I'm afraid it's the same answer. We had to have those returns in by whatever date it was in April for you to be in this scheme. I mean, hopefully things will pick up. At least he hasn't got any tax to pay yet. So there's not actually any money coming to us. But apart from that, no, I mentioned some people fall between the cracks. We do know this, and there's not very much we can do about it. Them's the rules.
Can I just chuck one question that I've had a lot of people ask me on social media, and it's probably a bit late for this now, but a lot of us fall into limited company sole directors, where trades, I think, well, not just construction, it's 822,000 of us in the country, which is obviously quite a lump, that pay ourselves, the minimum £600-700 a month, and the rest in dividends. Is there likely, if COVID continues to restrict our work, that we can actually get anything rather than 80% of 500 quid?
Yeah, well, at the moment, the problem is that we don't know what those dividends are, because when the accounts come into tax office, I see loads of these company accounts. They don't show what the dividends are. So you may see it in what you get, but we don't get that information. In fact, they don't even always show what your salary is. They should do, really, but they don't actually show it with what we get. So we don't know what we'd be paying 80% of, because that information has never come into us. So they decided not to come up with that scheme, again, because people could say anything they wanted, really. We wouldn't know whether a dividend was right or not, whether it was the amount you actually got. So we haven't got anything to base it on. Also, dividends don't just come to people who run their own company as a salary. They come to all sorts of people who invest in businesses. They might not be involved in running it. I mean, I can only mention an individual because he's in the news, but like Philip Green of BHS, Sir Philip Green of BHS, whose wife owns all the shares but lives in Monaco. So there's no tax on them.
1.2 billion, wasn't it? She's taken in dividends.
I don't know. I don't know their tax affairs in detail.
Unbelievable.
But obviously, we don't know who the dividends go to. We don't know who's getting them, and an awful lot of smaller accounts. We literally get half a dozen or a dozen lines of detail, and we don't have that dividend information. So we just can't work it out. We couldn't even work it out with a pen and paper, yet alone with with a computer program.
Well, let's try and get the rest of the questions done. I was conscious we've got about 5-10 minutes left. Please keep questions coming in. I'm being joined by the brilliant Jaquetta, who's given lots of answers to questions, anything to do with tax returns. Dean says thanks very much. Dean Marsh, my fault. He's just sent a message saying thanks ever so much, Jaquetta. So hopefully that's helped you, Dean. Just want to say before I do the next question, I think just a bit of fun on this. Isn't Boxing Day one of the busiest days of tax returns and returns sent in online?
Yes, it is. Christmas Day, Boxing Day, New Year's Eve. We sit and wonder why, and we don't know whether it's like people have resolutions that they're going to get it done, or we rather suspect it's because they've got the relatives round, or normally they have the relatives round. They don't want to sit and watch on television. They've had enough of the relatives. So they crawl off into the office room and say, I've got something important to do on the computer, and wander off and do them then. So we think that's what happens. But yeah, we sometimes get tens of thousands of them. It's quite surprising.
Well, the only thing is, if you are doing it on Boxing Day, which a lot of people are, just make sure you've not got a belly full of ale. Otherwise, your numbers are going to be as bad as mine.
You can come back and change it afterwards. So.
I didn't know that. So if you put something in, you wake up a little bit furry headed after Boxing Day, you can go in and amend what you've done.
Return, yes. And same as if after 31st of January you suddenly think, oh no, I've missed that job out, or in fact, I've counted the deposit 3 times, so I'll put the income in 3 times by mistake for that bit. You can go in and change it. We'd recommend where there's a little white space, you put a sentence that just says, I have changed this because. But if you don't, that's fine. We do accept that you're digging through your papers and you find another bit of paper you didn't have when you did your tax return, so you've got time to do that.
Just another quick I think a few people have said problem is with the grants, you spend it. There's a lot of things you've got to outlay, both commercially and personally. Few people, including Adi, has said he's absolutely bricking it for next year about paying tax, etc. Back to what you said earlier, just pick the phone up and be honest,
Pick the
and
phone
let's
up.
try
We've got
and
a
work
special
together.
time to pay helpline, which I'll say now, and you can pop up later. It's 0300 200 38 22. So 0300 200 38 22. Time to pay. Pick us up and speak to us. We really don't want you getting into trouble. We'll see what we can do. You have a rough idea of what you can and can't pay, what your finances are, what your mortgage is, all of that sort of thing, so that you can talk about what you can and can't do, what you've got now, what you haven't got now. Of course, the idea of that money was to keep you going. It wasn't to put it in a bank account to save it up for your tax bill. It was to keep the business going, to keep you going, so that as and when things can pick up, we do give time to pay. If anyone's got any reasonable way of paying us, whatever time it is, we'll try and arrange it.
Well, we've got literally a few minutes left. Get your questions in. Hopefully I've read out as many as I can. We've got about 5 or so minutes left. Anything to do with tax advice. We've got the reverse chargeable VAT, which is kicking in, as Jacquetta said, 1st of March next year. VAT returns. Jacquetta's going to come on probably every 2 or 3 months, probably every couple of months, really, because we've got a lot to talk about. We certainly can't do it all in one show. But last few questions. I think another thing, Jacquetta, is if we mentioned it before, but let's mention it again. A lot of us pick the phone up to talk to people. HMRC with COVID and everything else are obviously going to be a lot busier than normal. If in doubt, Google it, because we were saying about these webinars and the short videos, even us trades can understand them. They're quite plain English, aren't they?
They are. That's the idea of them. I've looked at a couple of the scripts for the webinars, and it's exactly what you want to say in plain English. If you're on a live one, you can ask questions as well, which is good. Another thing I'll mention there is called web chat, and it's a bit like
which I've used.
People to and fro. You type your message in, just go for HMRC web chat. You type your message in, somebody types back, you type again, they type back. The wait for that is normally a lot shorter than it is for the telephone lines, which is
I'll vouch for that.
Yeah. we move people to and fro between different things at different times, depending on where it's really busy. So unfortunately, if you're phoning about tax credits just when everyone else is phoning about their self-assessment tax return, you probably will have a wait. But that's why I say go for the quieter periods and try and get in touch with us. And Monday morning is always really busy. Everyone thinks, I must do that. They spend all weekend worrying about things and contact us on Monday morning. Interesting little bit for the new year as well. Come February, we'll be publishing which employers have been claiming the furlough scheme. And we know, as I say, there's hundreds of thousands in the construction sector that have been on furlough at some point. You'll be able to see if they were claiming from December onwards. And on your own personal tax account, you can see if your employer has been claiming for you. Because I mentioned fraud, we're getting people trying fraud on the furlough scheme, and lots of employees have been concerned because they're getting, they think their employer's claiming furlough for them, whereas actually they're being made to work full time. And that's not how it's supposed to work. So you can actually check if your employer's doing that. If there is something wrong, you can report it to us, and we are chasing up. We've started chasing up those employers now. There are perfectly good claims out there. Not all employers are fraud, like not all self-employed people are fraud. Most people are pretty honest, but you can do that. Also, another good thing, if you're on furlough, you can't also be made redundant at the same time. So that's new. And
is that law?
It's now part of it. They can only claim the furlough if you're not on what's called a statutory period of notice, which is redundancy, retirement, or resignation. So if you are on your way out for whatever of those reasons, and redundancy is the one that most people will be worried about, then they can't be claiming furlough for you. And of course, your redundancy pay has to be based on your full-time pay, not anything less. So, be aware of that. That is new. They can't be claiming furlough just while they're getting rid of you. The idea is furlough is to help keep you on.
Well, Jacquetta, unfortunately, we've run out of time. I hope I've answered as many questions that have come through. I think the best advice that we've got from today is when I was first talking to Jacquetta in previous roles or shows, it was very different. HMRC, with what's going on now, do want to help. So if you are struggling with payment, put a search into your search engine and look at
HMRC at the front.
HMRC at the front. Otherwise, I've seen it. You get these firms that pretend to give you advice, and suddenly you've got to pay them. So that's a scam. So watch out for that. But few messages coming in thanking us. Daniel Long says thanks. He really appreciates the help and advice, as it's been very worrying for him. If it is worrying for you, there is a video on the Construction Industry Charities website. Sorry, their YouTube channel. My mistake. The Construction Industry Charities called the Lighthouse Club, and it's a charity which help you financially, mental and physical health. So if you or your family is struggling with this pretty crap time of year, please watch this video on their YouTube channel. We'll stick a link up. In fact, it's brilliant, George, in the background. It's already up we go. The link's there. Watch that video, because listen, you're not on your own. I've been quite vocal in my journey. I've been through it. I've hit the rock bottom, and the charities like the Lighthouse Club are there to help. So please have a look. There's a brilliant app. Keep that on your phone. I've got it on mine. Each day you put in how you're feeling, if you want mental health advice, physical health, financial help. Absolutely brilliant video. But listen, guys and girls, it is shit out there at this time of year, especially for us trades. Don't think you're on your own, because you're not. Have a look at that video, and don't be afraid to pick up that phone. Great video. And give us a ring. Give HMRC a call. As Jaquetta says, there to help and work with us, not against us. So we've run out of time. We're going to try and put all the links up. I know that George has been tapping away. There's the link there to the video. As the chat comments have gone through, there's the links to HMRC. I'm off to defug myself out of this van, because I can't drive anywhere. It's freezing outside and warmer in here, so I've got to go and get this sorted to get onto the job. But Jaquetta, thank you. We will love to have you back in the new year. There's bound to be more advice and grants and upside down this and that, which us trades need explaining. But thank you for your time. Everybody, if you are working, keep working, enjoy, graft hard. If you're not, and you're struggling, have a look at that video. But listen, next year is going to be an absolute belter. Have a good afternoon. See you next week.